Welcome to Wild Mama Voices. Woohoo! We are here. We are here every single month at Ka Mahina, same place, around the same time. So every single month when we meet, the whole point is to amplify our voices and our stories as mamas, because we're really, really dedicated to shifting the narrative around what it looks like and means to be a mama. And the only way to really do that is to have public conversation. How can we shift the narrative if we're not talking? And so every single month, we always center a conversation. I always invite a mama guest who comes. Today, it's going to be Hi'ilani. And we always just discuss the raw, the real, the lessons, because I think that we can all grow as mamas when we're together, when we share, when we hear other stories, and we normalize the challenges, but also the joys. So that's the intention for Wild Mama Voices, just to gather. I haven't seen a space like this, and so I was like, let me create it. But Wild Mama does a lot of different things. We have an online program for mothers, a cohort program. We have a membership that's launching in a couple months, which is exciting. And then we do this free event. I just did my first retreat a couple months ago. So, we're just doing all the things to support our mamas in the community. So there's a scan code up there. You can kind of get connected for wherever you're at, whatever you need. You can find the resources that work for you. We also have a podcast. And so these conversations are also on the podcast every month, so that anyone who can't be here can tune in. So we always just want to make sure that we record for the people and for the mamas who are in other countries, in other states, because they be tuning in. So at Wild Mama, we really prioritize aligning to the rhythms and the cycles of nature. And so this is based on my different cultures, African culture, as well as my native First Nation, indigenous cultures. This is the sacred medicine wheel. But there's lots of different adaptations of the sacred medicine wheel across cultures. And so what I did was I took the principles of it and I created something called the Wild Mama Alignment Wheel. And it's a sort of framing for how we as mamas can align ourselves to the rhythms and the cycles of nature so that we can learn our own natural rhythms and cycles. I feel like we'd be surprised how many of us don't really understand what we need when, because we're not taught. And so this is a really simple way for us to kind of realign back to our deeper knowing by learning from Grandmother Earth, because she knows it all. We're just coming out of winter now, and it's all about death and rebirth. So probably you did a lot of releasing over the last 3 months, right? And so now it's a time to be in spring, which some people think, oh, spring, lots of big energy, but actually it's not. It's actually a time to pause and be present, to kind of see what wants to bloom, what wants to grow, right? Because we just had a lot of things die in the winter. So now we got to give a little bit more space for things to start to bloom. So you can think of it as like the sun rising. You sit and you watch, you pause, and you be present. So that's kind of the spring energy as things start to bloom, things start to blossom. And my intention is to hold space today and to just vision really big, because as mamas, we are not taught to vision. We're told to be quiet, to shrink, and that is just not the energy that we're in here. So please dream big. Please think of the impossible, because it's actually possible. And so that's the energy that I'm bringing, is just holding that space of possibility and blossoming and abundance. And I'm just stoked. I'm super, super stoked. Hi, Hi'ilani. I'm so excited for Hi'ilani to be here and to have a little short conversation, because I feel like you really also value the rhythms and the cycles of nature. And I think as an indigenous people, that's in our bones and in our DNA, but you really intentionally prioritize the Mahina. So I'm really excited for you to share some of that with us today. So thank you for being here. I appreciate you.
I'm excited about this too.
Yay. So just so that people can kind of get a sense of who you are you, Hi'ilani? How many kids you got? And just maybe talk about your motherhood journey, what has been kind of the ups, the downs, the challenges, and also the wins that you've had as a mama.
Well, I I'm actually from Hilo, and I come from a very strong line of wahine, of moms, grandmothers, and so forth. And from a very young age, I knew that I was going to be a mother, like actually birth children. And I feel that now that I have birthed children, I think I understand now when people choose not to have children either.
Say more.
It's one of those things where like, oh my gosh, I wanted 2 and now I have 4. You know, like it just happened really quickly.
Yeah.
At a later age of my life.
Yeah.
So being born and raised in Hilo, coming from a very strong line of women, they definitely put me in certain situations to make sure that I would carry on that lineage. And that's how I feel about being a mother, is that the reason I have had these children is because these children are going to carry on my Ohana line. And I think a lot of times that's what happens with especially women that come from really strong matriarchal lines.
Yeah.
You know, the children have a purpose. They're not just to make me feel like a mom.
Yeah.
It's really like I have birthed you, but it's you chose to be in this family, you know? So let's figure out what that means together, you know? And I'm super excited as I watch them grow, each one of them.
Yeah.
And then the fact that I started later in life, and my first child, she was born when I was 35, and my last child I was 41.
Beautiful. Damn.
I know. And
wow.
The fun, actually, you know what, I'm gonna tell this fun story. So
Yes.
it's kind of fun because you know, being from strong women, you intimidate men, right? So it's really hard to find a good father
Yes.
for your children, right?
Yes.
And sometimes as you're getting older, you start to feel like, oh my gosh, I gotta take what I got, right? I mean, you get to that point. And so I was actually gonna have children with my gay best friend, who's Yupik. He's half Yupik, half Norwegian or something. And he lives in Alaska, and we had worked together for years, and through all the work that we did. And he and I, like, he visioned our children, like everything. Like it was like ready to go.
Wow.
Like ready to turkey base, you know?
Strategic planning.
Right? Like we're gonna have these Yupik Hawaiian children, they're gonna do this, they're gonna do that, and you know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then I meet the father of my children. And so that's what's kind of fun about the rhythms, right? And so I meet the father of my children, and at first I was like, oh, this guy's fun, you know, just fun, right? Right, just fun. And but then I started to realize, I'm like, oh, I think I'm supposed to have children with him.
Whoa.
It was really fascinating. It was really fascinating.
Wait, but can you just say, like, how did you know? What happened?
There was just something that told me.
Wow.
And it wasn't, and it was really interesting because we're not together now. But I also knew that that was going to happen.
All 4.
Yeah. All 4 is from one man, but we're not in a relationship anymore.
Wow.
But I knew that was going to also happen. So it was a very interesting,
You know things.
this motherhood part of my life.
Wow.
It was very just interesting to like go through it and then be where I am now.
Yeah.
With them.
Wow.
And being I don't feel like I'm not enough for them. I feel that, and they are totally great as individual children, individual people. And so unfortunately I didn't have children with my gay best friend. But he understood. It was interesting how the rhythms just happen.
Yeah.
Now he is a big part of why I follow the moon, though. And so he was with me during the journey of me becoming associated with the Mahina, with the moon. And so when in this motherhood time, the moon was not important as much. No, it was actually. And I looked at the moon in different ways, but then it wasn't until my last child, who's here, Kaikapu, was born. And at 3 months, I really started to do the work to learn the Mahina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Before we get into that, I want to hear a little bit about, because you said a couple things. One, you said you're helping your kids to be in their purpose. I would really love to hear how you're doing that or what that actually looks like. But then you also said that you really feel like you are enough for your keiki. And I feel like that's probably one of the biggest things that mamas struggle with, is feeling like they're worthy or enough. So do you feel like that feeling of enough comes from that strong line of Wahina that you're from? Or where does that come from?
it comes from that, and it's because they know who they come from. They know their mo'oku auhau. They know their lineage. They know their, and the oldest one, she's only 13, gonna be 14. She's not that old.
Yeah.
And she's constantly asking me more about, she just memorized her mo'oku auhau that she's using for presentation.
Wow.
From one line, just one line, right? Because that's all you can really have time for. And then, and she yesterday told me, Mom, I want to really learn more about that line, because she's reciting their names. So that's why I know that they are great.
Yeah.
Because they know they come from these kinds of people.
Yeah.
These people that are more than enough. These people that have thousands of years of knowledge that they also pull from. And that, unfortunately, they don't have a good relationship with their father. But it doesn't even affect them, because they have so much fullness from their mo'oku auhau. And as a mother, I still give them his side as well, because that is part of them.
Yes.
Right? And so that's also great, because they understand that they have all these lines and these ancestors that stand with them. And so as long as I am open and not allowing allowing them the space, allowing them the aloha, allowing them the support to be where they're going, that's why I know I'm enough. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And I think for me, it's really powerful because, like I said, I just figured out where my slave ancestors come from, Gabon and Sierra Leone. And that's just from my grandmother and grandfather's line from my dad's side. But even just that, I'm like, I don't even know anything else. But even just that is like, hell yeah. Like, there's land, I can name it. It's still there. There's something about that. But like, I think that that's a beautiful thing for you to be here, that your land is not only still here, but also the lineage, the knowledge of the lineage is still here, because that's the first thing that the colonizers worked to wipe out, because of how much power you get from it. So I love that it's, it's still present, it's still strong, it's still there, and your keiki are able to like connect with that at such a young age. I think that's like impeccable and amazing. Good on you for keeping that all alive. That's beautiful. And so in terms of like helping them have purpose and a sense of purpose, are you sort of just like kind of watching what emerges for them naturally and, kind of shaping that? Or do you feel like there was something that you knew about it? Because it's very clear that you have strong sense and you know things. And so was it a sense of like what their purpose was from birth, or is it kind of emerging as they grow? Like, how do you orient yourself with that?
It starts from what their name is. So what name they were given.
Yes.
Because of course, like in Hawaii, we have all kind of names, right? Some of us have choke names, right? Like too many names.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be a nightmare when they have to write them all out, right? They have to sign it all out, So it starts with the intention of like before they were born, and their name, how they got their name, and what their name means, and who it connects to in our lineage. And then I also look at their physical body.
When they're born.
When they're born and as they're developing. It tells you a lot when you look at their physical body. And then also knowing the birth moon phase, the Hawaiian moon phase they're born on.
Yeah.
Tells you a lot as well. And then their physical body, their development, as well as how what they gravitate to, right? And then their natural talent, their natural, kind of things that they like. And so I also am really thankful for having charter schools, because charter schools allow the development of each individual child. You know, they don't stamp out and colonize them like most of the Department of Education, just because they have to, right? I don't think it's anybody's fault. It's just the system. And so I'm really thankful, you know, because there were many times when their father and I talked about homeschooling, because we didn't want that individual light to get like impeded upon. Then the other part is choosing not, because of the pandemic shutdown, 3 of them were, their first language was Olelo Hawaii, you know, and they went into Olelo Hawaii first, and then have transitioned now, still Hawaiian focused charter school, but not in the medium of Olelo Hawaii. But I also believe for them to be able to at least speak one of their native tongues growing up is powerful. Their whole mind is differently situated. You know, it's just a different, and because I was teaching in Olelo Hawaii in my tummy, they already had it from the gestation. And so that's another thing. I know it's a lot, but that's what it is.
No, that's great.
You're looking at,
Who
and
is
I know,
inspired?
and I know all of
Me.
us who have birthed children. For example, like, so it's cool, right? When you meet another wahine, and even if they didn't birth the child, but they're so close to the child, that they have this connection. That's also, it's very valid, right? It sometimes doesn't matter that you actually birthed it. It's the amount of time and all that stuff, right? Connection. But I just met this mama that I was helping, and she was telling me her son had gone through an episode, and she goes, you know, I couldn't smell him. I just couldn't smell him. And I was like, I get it. Yes, I understand what you mean, because she meant that wasn't her son wasn't present at that time that this episode happened, because she was like, I couldn't smell him, I couldn't feel him, I couldn't, you know, he wasn't him. And then we went through this whole thing about why he wasn't himself through a Hawaiian lens, and I was like, that's what mamas do. Even if you're like a mama auntie, right, or a mama grandma, right, you know what I mean, like you know these offspring so well that you smell, you can taste it almost, and you can see and feel. All your senses are connected, that you can feel it. And so it's engaging those senses almost all the time with the children allows me to understand, like, okay, you know, this is what maybe you should be going towards. And then having a conversation. So that's the other thing. My mom, when she raised me, I felt like she never talked to me like I was a child. And she wasn't, and you know how some people talk about like they were their parents' best friend. I never felt like I was her best friend. But she didn't talk to me like a child. She talked to me like, if I had a question, she answered me directly. If she wanted to tell me something, she told me directly. You know, she never beat around the bush. You know, I mean, we had some really great sex questions and conversations at a very young age. But it allowed me never to be shamed, because she answered them like no problem, you know, and so I told myself that when I had children that I would do that same thing. And it has worked so well that they, like, when I have a heart-to-heart conversation with them, they're not surprised, and they answer me so truthfully.
Same with mine.
Right? And it's because of what you put out. But that's the other part, right? Like having those conversations on a daily basis, having the check-ins, being real mindful of what is happening around them all the time. And it seems like you wouldn't have time for yourself doing it, but you do too. Isn't that fascinating? Like, you feel like what I'm describing will take too much time, but it doesn't.
I find though that, like, with a lot of mamas, that is actually challenging because of their own relationship with themselves is in jeopardy, or many of us are in survival mode. So it's very difficult to be so in tune with your own keiki when you yourself are not in tune with you. So how have you been able to, like, stay so in tune? And were you always like that, like as an early, you know, mama, or before that? Because I know that there's probably many mamas who would love to be able to do that, but struggle to even find that knowing and to trust that knowing within themselves, you know?
So the Mahina
Yeah.
is a really great way to intune yourself.
Yes.
Intune yourself. And then the Mahina also allows you to then tune into anyone that's around you, especially children. And so having a relationship with the Mahina helps you discover different phases of you, allows you to have grace for self. Yeah, because women, as women, not even just mamas, that women, we don't give ourselves enough credit or chance to have those imperfect
Yes.
actions.
Yes.
You know, so the Mahina allows that because the phases, the way that the Hawaiian phases are laid out, our Hawaiian ancestors gave us that time. You know, they gave us permission to have those off days, gave us permission to be, and you know, and you can tell your child, you know what, it's ole. It's an ole day. And you're having an ole day, and I'm having an ole day. So what are we gonna do about it? You know what I mean? Like, like have these and utilize the Mahina, and it's a great thing because it helps everybody feel okay with what's happening in your emotions. So that's one for how to manage yourself, especially because we all, you know, I'm not always this level, right?
Yeah.
Right, I'm not always this level. I have my off days and all that kind of stuff. And so it allows that rhythm, right? It allows you to kind of monitor your rhythm a little bit and then gives you that grace. For me personally, I was given the name Hi'ilani when I was 6 months in my mom's uterus, in the womb. And my grandmother and my grandmother's sister, her oldest sister, my grand aunt, sat my mom down, and they both spoke Hawaiian, and they were talking to each other in Hawaiian. My mom said she sat there just looking at them, and then they said, they vehe kabaibala, they let the Bible open itself, and they looked at what scripture was there, and then they looked at her and said, okay, this baby's a girl, and then her name is Hi'ilani. And because she's always going to hold herself, they actually said she's always going to sit pretty. And my mom's like, what the hell does that mean?
Sit pretty.
And I'm like, I don't sit pretty. So I don't know, like, it's really funny. But that's what they told her. And then she was like, okay. You know, because, you know, you don't question, right? You don't question.
Yeah.
But later when I got to ask my grandma, like, well, what does really Hi'ilani mean? And she said, sit pretty. And I was like, what does that mean, Grandma? Like, I don't understand. And then she goes, give me a little bit. I'm gonna let it kind of miko, like, sit in me. And then she wrote this beautiful paragraph about, like, almost prophesizing my purpose. And it was that I would always hold myself with dignity and honor. That's the sitting pretty, representing my family. And so that, when you're given that, right, when you're given a name and then you're prophesized in this way, and then you're given even more phases, I guess, of it, or facets of it, you can't help but be it. And that's one of the things I would love for all of us who have children to expand upon the names that they have been given, because that's part of their prophecy, you know, and because there's no mistake why they were given each of their names. I have a story for each one of my names. And I am so thankful, right, that I know my story for each one of my names. And so it's so important for me to tell my children, you know, that you have each of these names because of this, this, this. And then as they grow, the meaning will grow too, right? And then you can always bring it back. Well, you know, it's because you were born on this moon, and then your name is this, and then, you know, and then your ancestor did this, and then da-da-da, you know, and then sometimes we don't like what our ancestor did, and then it's part of us, but it's okay. Because there are no bad moons. Yeah, there are no bad moons, is what I tell them. I love it.
I think that's just like, it's just remarkable. It's so powerful. Because like for me too, like all my kids' names really represent a time in my life, you know, but also it was something that just kind of came through for them, but then you're always, at least for me, kind of surprised with like, oh damn, that was actually really accurate. The name that they now carry. And then for me, like 4 or 5 years ago, my ancestors gave me a new name, and it came through. And then once I got my name, my daughter was like, well, I want a name. And so I started calling in that name, and it took about 4 years. And then last year it came through. And so we had like a naming ceremony. And so I've been telling her like, hey, as you're navigating life, your names are like maps. They're like treasures. They're like gold. They're like a Pandora's box. Like if you ever feel lost, go back to your name, because it tells you a lot about your direction, who you are, and just gives you insight. And that's not something that I have. My name is Tiffany. Like, what? Like my mom was not in that space. My parents were not in that space. So I didn't necessarily have a name. So then when I got my ancestors, named me Red Heart Wild Eagle, it told me a lot about who I am, my core essence. And it just gives me that rootedness of like, okay, if I don't know anything, I do know this. Even if everything changes, I do know these things. And so I think it's a blessing. And I think for all of us, like maybe not all of us have this lineage or these, Mahina in our life. Like my mom passed at 53 when I was like 25. Her mom died at 39. And then my grandma on my dad's side passed and, had Alzheimer's. So I know that not all of us have women in our lives, but even still, when we can connect to our own selves, when we can connect to our ancestors, we can get a name, we can give a name, and like you said, even if we've already named our children something, we can expand upon it as they grow. So I love that you're sort of showing the expansiveness of this, that even though we have all different lineages, different stories, different family, like when we can align to these natural rhythms, whether it's the Mahina, whether it's the sacred medicine, whether it's all of the above, we can use that to fuel this deeper knowing and still be connected to ourselves, to our ancestors. And the name feels like just a powerful, almost like a vision board. It's like, it's a reminder, of like when you forget, come back to your name, come back to these things that help you kind of know who you are. So I love that you have that expansive thinking around it. It's super, super powerful. Yay. It's amazing. So as we kind of come into vision boarding today, right? Like I hope that this is starting to inspire y'all as you think about your own visions and kind of what you might put on your vision board today. But as we think about that, like how do you feel like people can bring into their vision boards the Mahina intentionally?
So each of the Mahina phases, the 30 have their own inoa, their name, and that's the key to that Mahina phase, their name, what it means. So at kamahinaproject.com/calculator, you can actually look at and it's really good on a phone. You can look at what your birth moon phase is, but you can also start to look at your mo'oku auhau. You can look at like when people were born and people were passed. You can you can start to look, once you lay it out, you go, oh, this moon phase really must mean something to my family because so many things happen on that moon phase.
Wow.
And then you can expand upon that. So the first place to start really is to look at what your Mahina phase is, what you were born on. And then I brought some just like some printouts of all the different phases so you can kind of look at it. And then I'm here to help you with the Olelo Hawaii part of it. Mm-hmm. And then kind of show you how it relates to you, as well as you can put it onto your board. You can also be drawn to a certain phase, and then later you'll find out why. So for example, right now, the phase that I'm the most drawn to is Akua, which is Saturday's Mahina. And Akua for me, I'm drawn to it because it is a full moon. Hawaiians believe in 4 full moons. It's a full moon, and it rises before the sun sets. It's right before our fullest moon, and when it rises, because the sun hasn't set, it looks like it's a little bit lit on fire. And it's a moon that our ancestors or spirits are alive. They're a little bit close to us and in that Mahina. So especially people who have like just recently lost someone like in transition, a kua will bring them really close to you. It's also an ignition, a ho'a or ignition, igniting of your kua, your backbone. So that also relates to our ancestry, but it also makes us stand up straighter. People born on the Akua moon are usually people who know how to ku'e for a community. Not for themselves, it's for community. And that's really interesting to me. So I'm really drawn to that Mahina right now. I love to watch it rise because it looks like it's on fire, and it just has this just reverence when I watch it. And so you can also get drawn to a certain Mahina as your relationship grows, or it can be like, we all have our patterns, and we might see a certain moon all the time and we don't realize it, but we recognize because the shape is the same. So now you can look on the thing and see which Mahina that is. That might be something you like. There's so many ways that it starts your relationship. It's your relationship, it's your journey. And my kuleana, my purpose in Ka Mahina Project is to help people with that journey. I'm not prescribing you anything.
Yeah.
I just helping you figure out what your relationship is and your rhythm with the moon, and then it enhances the rhythms and connections to all of nature.
Yes. And I think that's the most powerful thing for me, aligning to the rhythms and cycles of nature. There's no right or wrong. It's like you're saying, it's about you and your alignment and your relationship and then the relationship to the whole. But it's not, I feel like it's very different than like westernized approaches to, things like this, because theirs is very rigid. There's a right, there's a wrong, you're either perfect or you're not, and it makes you feel shitty. But I think when we can align more to these natural rhythms, it's like, oh no, there's so much grace. And there's so much gray area that's not black and white. Like it's very non-linear. It's very cyclical. It's a spiral,
Yeah, and everything's not only positive.
Yes.
We honor the times when we have to go into po, we have to go into dark. And huna is a moon we just had, means to be hidden. There are times when you have to huna. And that's what we know.
Yes.
And there's no shame in that.
Yes, but we're taught to feel shame, in the quote unquote negative feelings. Even for me, like I think in my journey, I was not taught to be okay with feeling angry or like expressing like disappointment or anything like this. Like I always had to make sure that I'm overly positive. It was definitely somewhat of a coping mechanism. But even recently, I've had some super high highs. I got on the news, so cool. I had an amazing retreat. All these things. But then I found that I would like have a really low after, and I was like, damn, like what is this? What is going on? But for the first time, I was also just like, I'm just gonna be sad. I'm just gonna be okay, feeling a little bit sad, not quite understanding it, but I'm just gonna be in it. And then it allows me to fully actually go through the experience of the feeling, right? Which is the full process. And then it goes away. And then I'm like, okay. And I might have a realization, I might not. But I think that for me, that's been like a huge thing as I like have come into these natural rhythms, is really accepting the ebbs and the flows, really accepting the full cycle of the human experience. Like the life force energy, that whole you, that's all of those feelings. That's not just the positive and the highs. It's the low lows, because sometimes that's where you really learn a lot and grow or have the most epiphanies and realizations. So I love that, and I want us to normalize that for each other and in this space, that it's okay to feel bad sometimes. It's okay to feel like crap, even if like things are going well in your life. You're like, what? But that's I think the nuance of humanity, of being like a full, whole human being. And that's part of the beauty of it, which is lovely. So as we come into visioning, for you, do you have any like recommendations for our mamas, or anything that they can be thinking about, or maybe why you think bringing in the Mahina is important into their visioning process?
Well, it's definitely affecting you even if you're not recognizing the moon, because it has that ume, that pull and push on water. So we are 80+% water, so it's gonna affect us anyway. So it only behooves you to learn about it from our Hawaiian perspective, because the Hawaiian perspective is, to me, is really fun. It's fun, you know, it's fun to learn it. And then what it normally does once you start learning the Hawaiian one is it'll actually lead you to the lunar calendar or even the solar calendar that you most align with. So for example, I was working with these Singapore students, and one of the men was like, he was native Singaporean. There's like 2 different indigenous lines there, and he said, yeah, I was so excited to learn about the Hawaiian moons, and I was doing stuff, and my dad was like, hey, what you doing? And he goes, I'm learning about the Hawaiian moon calendar. And he goes, what? And then he brings out this binder. This is in Singapore, and it was their Singapore lunar calendar from their family.
Wow.
And so he like WhatsApped me like really quickly. She was like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I need to talk to you. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, what's up? And he's like, oh my God, like this is what the Hawaiian moon calendar led me to my families.
Yes.
You know, and that's the kind of stuff that will start to happen, because almost all of our cultures are lunar, and so it just expands. There's always illumination that happens when you look at the Mahina, and so to me it's something you should do.
Yeah.
As a mama too, and as a wahine, as a woman, because we also go through our time, right? So when we align and we start to look at our patterns, it even emphasizes and helps you with your menstrual cycle, and it even helps you when you're done with your menstrual cycle, because even when physically we're done, we still go through it. So the Mahina really helps you with that transition and that time of life as well. And in traditional society, when you actually stopped the actual bloodletting, you had a different kuleana. Your purpose changed. Now you were focusing on the women that were still going through the cycle, and you're focusing on the children, right? Because now your body has changed, and now you are doing the stuff so that when you leave, right, you're leaving your legacy, no matter what that is. And so the Mahina helps you with all of that. And so, yeah, I'm here. So if you guys have any questions, I'm totally available. And then I also printed out a couple of Hawaiian values that you can add in, as well as some olelo no eao, some Hawaiian wise sayings that called to me this morning. Beautiful. I decided to just print some out, so they're there. You can add them in. If you have something you want to be translated into olelo, I can help you with that as well, because it's the Hawaiian language, because we live in Hawaii, is the activator of the place. It's the activator of this soil. So I would encourage you to use a little bit of olelo in your visioning, because of that activation as well. And then as well as maybe your own languages, you know? Like, I think it's the mixture of the languages help make the spiciness.
Yeah. Wild. Hello. I love that. So do you have like a process that you follow when you're doing vision boarding that might be helpful as folks kind of get into that space? Like, is there any kind of like way that you go about doing your vision boarding, or?
I haven't done a vision board in a long time, because when you're a mother, you're helping them do theirs, and you're not really, or you're helping them do stuff, and then you're like, I can do mine later, right? But recently, I've been writing down my like newfound goals, and they've been actualizing super fast.
Beautiful.
And just writing it down, and it wasn't even like I put it on a Post-it. You know what I mean? And I put it up, and then I put it in my phone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I could just quickly reference it. And I thought, that's like a vision board.
Definitely.
It's a totally different way. So however you feel you can do it. Because, oh my gosh, like today, one got totally actualized right before this.
Beautiful.
So that's why I'm like, and it was super quick. Chica, just tell me, Chica's my close friend, And I was telling her, oh my gosh, like that was kind of crazy quick,
Yeah.
you know?
That's what we're manifesting in here. Crazy
Yeah,
quick.
Crazy quick. Yeah. And I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Right,
Yes,
yeah.
that's awesome. Yeah, I think same for me. I feel like for me, my process is pretty organic. I tend to like to kind of have some general intentions that I'm thinking about. Nicole, I was talking to Nicole yesterday, and one of the themes that she was she was talking about maybe having like a themed board. So I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Like if there's a certain area of your life that you really want to focus on. So like having a themed board. But a lot of times I'll just like grab magazines that stand out, and I'll just be flipping, and anything that stands out, I'll pull it out and put it to the side. And I just kind of do that for a while, just like kind of collecting. And then when I feel like, okay, I think I'm done collecting, then I start to like kind of put things out, and then it's like, wow, it kind of emerges what your vision is or what you're kind of wanting, and then you start kind of placing it on the board. So really there is no right or wrong, like you said, but it is good to have some sense of intention and clarity, and that I think the bringing in of the Olelo Hawaii is like amazing, or your own language. You have pens, we have markers, literally everything you need, magazines from everywhere. So I think what we'll do, Nicole is going to lead us into a little bit of movement just to kind of shake our bodies up, move, get the blood flowing. But I hope that this conversation with Hi'ilani was like inspiring and like allowed you to feel like, I feel like for me, a deeper confidence in what you know and in your vision and what you kind of want, because that's a sense that I get from you. Is just like there's no need to question yourself. just know what you know and do it. And I love that energy and that perspective. Nicole, did you have a question? Yeah, so what I kind of wanted to do was have you do movement, and then while we're kind of visioning, y'all can ask questions, because I don't want to delay the visioning process, because it does take time, and that's why y'all are here. So I want you to be able to kind of get your stuff and then come back in circle. We'll be kind of making our vision boards together, and while we're doing that, we can be asking questions. Then we're doing kind of two things. They say it, feeding two birds with one stone. There you go. Or with one hand. So any last words, Hi'ilani, before we get into some movement? And then I know we'll continue conversating, but anything else that you want to kind of put into this space as we start to get into our vision boarding?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what you just said. Believe in yourself. Don't be scared to believe in yourself. That's what I feel a lot of women, and especially mothers, they're scared to believe really what is happening, because maybe it's not something you want, but it's usually what's going to happen because you are a mother. That's part of your maternal instinct, is understanding. And even if you are not a mother, that's still part of you too. Like, just stop denying it.
Yes.
Don't be scared of
it.
Don't be scared of your greatness.
Yeah.
Don't be scared of success. Don't be scared of failure, because from failure, if you have a failure, that means get ready for the next success.
Hey,
right?
It's only up
right,
from here.
Right, yeah.
No, for real. I mean, my daughter, we've been having this kind of conversation, because it's like in high school, I think they have to actually feel shitty about themselves. But I'm like, you really don't. Like, if you actually deep down, like, I'm like, I know you deep down don't actually feel that way. Like, yourself. But it's like when you're surrounded by people who put themselves down or like don't believe in themselves, you kind of feel inclined to like, oh yeah, well maybe I should also feel like that. But no. And that's why we have this space, so that you do not have to feel like that. At least in this space, you do not have to feel like that. Like, we want you to feel in your power and know who you are and be great. And we can all be great together because that's what's gonna change generations, right? We're all about 7 generations. We can't change and shift 7 generations if we aren't willing to be in ourselves at this point. And at Wow Mama, for us, your purpose will always be to align to the energy of your soul. That will always be your purpose. A lot of people think that your purpose is, I gotta find a job, that's my purpose. I gotta find everything outside of me. is my purpose. But for us, we really keep it simple. No, your purpose will always be to align to the energy of your soul. And only you know what that is. And it will change. And that's okay. That's the point, right? So when we can align to the rhythms and cycles of nature and to Grandmother Earth, she tells us that we can ebb and we can flow, right? We can change, and that's okay. We're going to be down sometimes, and we're going to be up sometimes, and just a part of life.